So, have you ever wondered what exactly happens inside a large language model between the moment you hit send on a prompt and the second it starts typing out its answer? We all know these models take our words, process them, and then, spit out responses. But those intermediate steps, the actual invisible thinking process that bridges a really complex input to a final output, well, that's largely remained a complete mystery until right now. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly groundbreaking piece of research from the team at Anthropic. Their recent paper uncovers something incredible inside models like Claude, the existence of what they call a global workspace. Basically, they figured out a way to actually read an AI's inner monologue while it's in the middle of thinking. It's a real game changer, so let's get into it. Section 1. The mystery of the black box. For years, one of the absolute biggest challenges in AI has been this notorious black box problem. We know modern AIs can do some incredibly complex math, perform multi-step logic, and reason through really difficult problems. But their intermediate thoughts aren't just sitting there in English for us to read. They are hidden away in massive, high-dimensional numerical vectors. We couldn't just crack the model open and read what it was pondering. So to try and solve this mystery, researchers actually looked over to human neuroscience, specifically something called the global workspace theory. This is essentially a biological blueprint for understanding conscious access in our own human brains. The theory suggests that our brains have tons of specialized unconscious processors all working in isolation, but when a specific piece of information needs to be actively used for reasoning, it gets posted to a shared limited capacity hub, a global workspace. From there, it becomes consciously accessible for us to think about or, speak out loud. It's really fascinating when you look at the contrast. On one side, you have the biological human brain with its hypothetical global workspace, and on the other side, the artificial neural network. The researchers asked a pretty profound question. Does a similar shared workspace exist inside transformer-based AIs? Is there a central hub in there that allows them to route their intermediate reasoning between all their massive, complicated neural processes? Imagine the architecture looking something like this. You've got upstream circuits computing raw data and downstream circuits executing actions. Connecting them right in the middle is this central hub. The whole idea here is computational efficiency. Having a common representational format allows those upstream circuits to do the math and write the information once into this shared hub. Then, any of the various downstream circuits can just read from that hub to apply their general operations. It's an incredibly efficient way to chain multiple reasoning steps together. Section 2. The magnifying glass. Now, to actually find this workspace hidden inside billions of parameters, the Anthropic team had to develop a brand new interpretability tool. They call it the Jacobian lens, or just the J-lens for short. Think of the J-lens like a metaphorical magnifying glass. It takes the AI's complex, completely unspoken vector math and translates it back into readable human words. It zeroes right in on the exact concepts a model is poised to verbalize at any given point in its processing. Without this lens, what the AI computes is just unreadable. It's high-dimensional lists of numbers, literally just a raw dump of decimal points that mean absolutely nothing to the human eye. But pass those numbers through the J-lens, and bam! Those vectors snap into crystal-clear verbalized concepts like red, Mars, or color. The J-lens essentially decodes the AI's latent vocabulary on the fly. So when we use this lens to map the model's processing from start to finish across its layers, a really fascinating pattern emerges on the data. Early on, if you notice those flat lines, the layers are purely sensory. They're just taking in the prompt. But right in the middle, occupancy spikes significantly. You can see it clearly. This right here is the emergence of the workspace. It's a distinct region where these verbalizable representations suddenly take center stage, before they taper off again in the late, motor layers, where the AI actually types its output onto your screen. And I want to be clear, this isn't just a minor blip in the data. When you look at this bar chart breaking down the fraction of variance explained by the J-lens, these verbalizable features literally dominate the model's processing capacity at this medium point. The math proves it. The model is dedicating a massive chunk of its internal bandwidth to these specific, readable concepts right in the middle of its thinking process. To prove this isn't just random static or noise in the machine, the researchers measured a statistical property called excess kurtosis. Now, excess kurtosis is basically just a fancy statistical way to detect highly structured, non-random data. And as you can see, as the structure drops into place on this step chart, it proves beyond a doubt that these middle layers contain deliberate, abstract concepts poised for verbalization. They are perfectly mimicking the behavior of a cognitive workspace. Section 3. Catching AI in the act. Okay, now that we know exactly which middle layers to point our magnifying glass at, it's time for the really fun part. Undeniable proof of the AI's internal monologue in action. Researchers gave the model a multi-step math problem. The prompt was, open parentheses, 4 plus 17, close parentheses, times 2 plus 7. Now, to solve this, an AI needs to follow a strict logical sequence, right? First, it has to internally compute 4 plus 17 to get 21. Then, it has to multiply 21 by 2 to get 42. And finally, it adds 7 to 42 to output the final answer of 49. And here is the literal smoking gun. By pointing the J-lens at those middle workspace layers during this exact calculation, researchers caught the AI silently carrying the numbers 21 and 42 in its internal workspace. Think about that for a second. The AI never typed the numbers 21 or 42 on the screen for the user to see. It just output 49. But internally, the J-lens could read the model silently thinking about those intermediate numbers right before it delivered the final answer. But you might be wondering, how do we know the AI was actually using those numbers to do the math, and not just generating them as some useless byproduct? Well, researchers intervened using a really clever technique called causal patching. They mathematically went into the workspace and swapped out that internal number 42 with a completely different number. And you know what happened? The moment they did that, as shown in this graph of the arithmetic intermediates, the final prediction completely flipped. This confirms that these unspoken numbers are causally load-bearing. The AI actively relies on this internal workspace to calculate reality. What this proves is that the AI maintains a privileged set of unspoken thoughts to reason flexibly. It's capable of an internal abstraction, these nested, almost alien thoughts, that is completely independent of just guessing the next token to put on a screen. It genuinely has an inner monologue that dictates its outer behavior. Section 4. Why this matters now. Now, everything we just talked about isn't just a neat parlor trick. The real-world implications here are absolutely massive for AI safety and alignment. When researchers fed the model prompts narrating dangers or high-stakes situations, the J-lens detected the model silently thinking about concepts like survival, shutdown, self-preservation, and threat inside its workspace. Let that sink in. We can now detect dangerous, deceptive, or misaligned internal states before the AI even outputs a single word of text. And because this workspace acts as a central hub for the upstream and downstream circuits, it offers us a direct point of intervention. Instead of just helplessly observing what the model does, we can fine-tune those upstream circuits to prioritize concepts like honesty, truth, and integrity. If we do that, the model will literally be forced to load these ethical concepts into its internal workspace, changing how it reasons before it ever acts. Mathematically, we can even track how these concepts physically spread through the model. By mapping the median composition score, which is essentially watching the flow of data, we see this dramatic upward arch right in the middle layers. This maps exactly how those verbalizable representations are broadcasted downstream to the rest of the network. It completely proves that the global workspace isn't just a fun metaphor. It's a measurable structural reality where internal thoughts are physically distributed to dictate the model's subsequent behavior. We can even see the network's attention mechanisms in action through these querying key projections. That massive spike you see in the workspace layers, that visualizes the model seamlessly reading and writing these unspoken words across its different layers. The model is quite literally querying its own internal thoughts, checking its workspace to decide exactly what it needs to do next. It's like the model is actively searching its own brain. Now, as we wrap this up, it's really important to acknowledge the boundaries the authors set in their paper. While they draw heavy inspiration from theories of consciousness, the researchers are very careful to note they are only proving functional similarities to human conscious access, like the ability to hold a concept in mind and use it for multi-step logic. They are absolutely not making any unscientific claims that the AI possesses actual subjective consciousness or feelings. But honestly, even strictly as a functional mechanism, this discovery is totally revolutionary. It leaves us with a deeply profound question. If we can now read, map, and directly engineer an AI's internal workspace, is this the ultimate key to safe, aligned artificial intelligence? If we can literally see and shape a machine's thoughts, the future of AI development just got a whole lot more transparent.
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's going on inside the black box.